by saying the sponsor of this podcast is Fatherhood AF, a community for fathers. It is a non-judgmental space where fathers who are on a path of growth, guys who are breaking cycles, can come, connect, share stories, share support, and find like-minded people. So if you're interested, go ahead, hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on YouTube, hit me up on TikTok, wherever. If you are interested, I am more than happy to connect you with this group. It's only a few of us so far, but we're trying to build this community and make it so there is a place with resources and like-minded people. Dude, I've been in so many men's circles, men's groups, and to be honest, the things that I don't like about these men's groups is, one, the over-the-top male bravado. I enjoy combat sports. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I've spent quite a bit of my life doing various striking sports. I like fighting, right? I am, for all intents and purposes, as masculine as it gets. I used to be a commercial diver. These are all things that are stereotypical masculine jobs, hobbies, things like that. However, I don't think it's necessary to always be so over the top masculine. I think sometimes it's okay for us to bring it down. Recently, I was having a conversation with a guy who I met at this retreat, and he was telling me, he's like, hey, bro, like, I know you're not on that soft shit, but like, I really appreciate you made such a big impact in my life. You taught me more this weekend than my father taught me in my entire life. And I thought that was really interesting, right? Not because of the sentiment he shared. That was beautiful, and that really moved me. But his first, statement about me not being soft, bro, I cry. Like, I'm in touch with my emotions at their depth, right? Like, I feel and I'm moved by emotion. And because of that, I'm able to be Billy Badass if I need to, but I'm also able to hold space gently. I think a lot of men, they kind of fly towards one side of the spectrum or the other, and they don't understand the dichotomy of feeling, the dichotomy of who it is we can be and what we can become when we embrace and accept all feelings without judgment. So that's the space we're trying to create, is not the hyper masculine, but an accepting space where people can come and explore. Oftentimes the hyper masculine space pushes out feelings. Bro, I was talking with a friend recently who was telling me about this retreat he recently went to, and there was this monster of a man, just absolutely fucking jacked dude, who's in there. He makes millions of dollars. He's got the luxury sports car, and he's talking about all the shit he's doing in his life and his systems and all this. And then my buddy started talking about his feelings, and he said, yeah, I could tell he was getting noticeably uncomfortable talking about his feelings and talking about, like, bro, women are pretty receiving when men get vulnerable, right? Granted, there is nuance to that. Like, there's nuance to everything. But men get noticeably uncomfortable when you talk about the depth of your feelings, right? We are creating an environment where that's not something you guys got to worry about. You can come in and be yourselves, and we'll be shining examples of what it's like to be yourself, man. So definitely hit me up if you're interested, man. We will take all comers. We appreciate you guys. This is not a for-profit group. It's completely free. That's the other thing. So many of these fucking groups, man, they charge an arm and a leg. Not us. It's completely free. There's tons of value, and the only thing that unlocks more and more value is your participation. So the more you participate, the more you're able to open up different levels of breathwork facilitation, different reflective practices for parenting, different techniques for getting the kids outdoors. We've got it all. It's run by myself, Fatherhood the Rapper, my buddy Alex Flores, who is a fatherhood coach. He actually helps fathers, learn to be their best selves, and helps them refine their reflective practice. Then we've got Alex Ward. Alex is another brother of mine who I actually met in a support group run by Alex Flores, which is quite the wild little connection point there. And he's become one of my best friends now. These two guys are my best friends, so they're absolutely incredible. I'm excited to be able to hold space alongside them and connect with you guys. All of us feel this call towards service, but we're not, super financially motivated. None of us are trying to get rich. We just want to hold space for you guys, and in turn hold space for ourselves, man. It's a beautiful thing when you can do that for your friends. So yeah, I guess we'll get into it, man. Today's episode, one of the things I'd like to talk about is talking to strangers. That's so funny. Guy on the internet says I should talk to strangers, mama. I am a firm believer that you should speak to strangers without time constraints and without holding back. You know, the beauty of speaking to strangers is you're never going to see them again. Dude, say whatever you want. I learned this when I was driving Uber several years ago. I would have people get into my Uber and they would trauma dump on me. They would tell me everything, dude. They would spill the beans about their life, dude, their struggle, their suffering, their circumstances, and I would hold space for them. And every once in a while, I would give them advice, but for the most part, I was just holding space. You know, a lot of people just need someone to hear them. And I got so many people who are like, wow, this was like the most transformational Uber drive I ever had. And I always thought that was kind of an interesting concept, you know, the fact that we're two strangers. And because of that, people kind of let their guard down, right? When you're not strangers, when you know someone, you have your story and you have your identity that you have created, but also the one that they perceive. And so on your end, you're going to try and be perceived, and on their end, they are going to continue perceiving you with the lens of whatever experiences they share with you. So I think there's something really special about just talking to strangers, man. The other night, I was going to a smoke shop after I got done with my tattoo session. Check it out. My buddy Garrett, his name is Garrett Langelar, but you can find him online as Shrug It. He started this piece. It's going to be a full leg piece when we're done, 6 months from now. But right now, we started with this piece, and then on the 22nd, we're going to be finishing like ankle all the way up here. So super excited about it. The craziest thing was the exercise and trust, because I didn't actually know what he was going to do beforehand. I just showed up at the shop. He showed me the stencil, and I said, dude, you're a fucking wizard. And not only is he a wizard, dude, there's like some level of telepathy. Obviously, we're close friends, so maybe that has something to do with it. But he read my mind. I was like, man, I hope he doesn't put a samurai on my leg, like an actual samurai. I want it to be samurai themed. I want it to be Zazen themed. And this samurai mask, I think, is a great kind of middle ground between having an entire samurai and someone else. So if you want Gary's information, it is Shrugget, Shrugget on Instagram. You can go find his page. The guy's an amazing artist. This one too, actually, this is crazy. Well, I'm not going to show you. I've got a piece on my leg. It's actually the very first piece he did. Well, not the very first. He did one or two beforehand, but it was one of the first pieces he did that was a full piece. Really beautiful piece, man. I talk to people all the time. I have a lot of friends who are tattoo artists, and they've said to me, like, oh, that one looks like pretty good. Where'd you get it done? And I'll tell them, they're like, wow, so that guy had barely any tattooing experience, and he did it in his mom's basement. That's pretty impressive. So shout out to Gary, man. What an absolutely phenomenal dude. And it was an absolute blast seeing his shop. His shop is called Funtime Social in Denver. His mentor, he is just an apprentice at this point in time, which is what makes this even crazier. But his owner is Brian. Oh man, I think it's Eckert, something like that. Maybe I'll correct it. So whatever this says right down here, that's what his actual name is. But I think it's Brian Eckert or Eckert. Brian's an amazing dude, really funny, man. Had a wonderful time. And not only that, his shop is a vibe, dude. Like, just such a vibe. If I were a tattoo artist, that's the kind of environment I would want to tattoo in. So big shout out to Funtime Social Club in Denver, to Shrug It, and to Brian as well. You guys are amazing. Can't wait to see you on the 22nd. Back to what I was talking about. What were we speaking on? We were speaking on... Oh, man. You know what's funny is when I was a pothead, I would forget things, and everyone would blame the fact that I used cannabis. And in 2021, I decided to take a break from cannabis because I was sure it was going to fix all of my problems. And granted, I was smoking a lot of weed. I was smoking, a couple ounces a week, just always smoking all day long. And I decided to take a break, ended up making it about 8 months, and then after that 8 months was complete, I started using cannabis again, and I tried it once or twice, and it was just way too intense. Just never really fully got into it. And since then, it's become few and far between. The last time I used cannabis was Thanksgiving of last year, so almost a full year now. Actually, Thanksgiving is coming up next month, so yeah, almost an entire year since I've used cannabis, which is kind of crazy. It's crazy how that works, man. You know, we have seasons for the things that we utilize as tools. You know, a lot of people put a lot of weight on drugs, right? They're like, oh, you know, drugs are bad. This drug is evil. That drug is good. This drug is in the middle. And the truth is, man, drugs are benign. Drugs aren't actually good or bad. We create, we identify or we assign them value. And that value is based on our individual relationship with them. So for the most part, usually if you have an unhealthy relationship with a drug, that's because of a traumatic past or something in your life that sees that as a solution and the perfect input, the perfect puzzle piece to the puzzle piece that's missing from whatever, you know, life experience, trauma, injury. And so instead of judging these substances, I usually try to look at that, and that way, ooh, I need a water. All these engine fumes. And that way you're not, you're not just being a fucking presumptuous dickhead. But it's interesting, man. Like, heroin's a great example. I was a heroin addict. I will have 10 years clean on the 2nd of December. That's wild to me, because to me, heroin was not like the end of the world. It was actually the beginning. And it brought me to such low lows that in that place I was able to find much deeper depth. I was able to really look into these you know, childhood experiences, these things from the very beginning of my life that shaped who I had become. And because of that, I was able to overcome my addiction. So just super powerful. A lot of people would blame heroin and be like, oh, heroin's evil. In my case, heroin showed me the door to my spirituality. Heroin opened the door for me to connect on a deeper level with what I've come to know as God. You know, I was essentially an atheist before these experiences introduced me to plant medicine and to fungi medicine like psilocybin, mushrooms. And that really is what made me connect to this feeling of divine connection and purpose. So pretty powerful stuff, man. Yeah, it's interesting, dude. Drugs are a trip. People also get super worked up about it, you know. Recently I'm in this group called, oh man, I don't even know what it's called. I'm in some drug addict Facebook group I go in there because I'm like, oh, these are all recovered addicts and we're going to make jokes about, you know, our addiction. And what I've come to find is it's actually like mostly people still in active addiction. And my jokes are not as well received when you're deep in addiction. The other day I made this post I didn't make a post, I commented on a post that said, just got a bunch of fentanyl, how much should I shoot up, thinking I'll shoot a gram. So I thought it was sarcastic, and I said, I think it's called a heroic dose. Have you thought about trying 7 grams? Which, if you know anything about fentanyl, that's obviously not a good thing. Heroic dose is a reference to psychedelics, specifically mushrooms. And I had some guy, like, dude, he got so upset, and then he actually went and started commenting on my social media and like my music and things like that. Like, he was very bothered by it, and I tried to hit the dude up and let him know, like, hey man, I thought this was a fucking joke. But alas, it was not a joke. Be careful with those addicts, man. Yeah, it's a fascinating concept. There was this kid who I was good friends with his sister growing up, and I knew him really well. And he started using, man. He was actually the manager at a dispensary I went to during the pandemic, and man, he used to hook it up. I'd go in. It was so funny. I'd go in, buy like hundreds of dollars worth of weed from this dispensary. I'd get to the checkout. He'd be like, oh, that's my buddy. I'm going to check him out. He'd come up, and then he'd be like, with your employee discount, that'll be 80 cents. And I'd look around like, 80 cents? Bro, that's a 99% discount. What? And he'd be like, yeah, it's just 80 cents. And I'd pay him, and never had a problem with it. It was never an issue. And then I ran into him, and he wasn't looking so good. I said, bro, what's going on? He said, man, I'm an addict, dude. I started using, Percocets, and now I'm using H, and I'm a little scared, man. And he asked me because, a decade ago I went and got clean with ibogaine. He asked me about ibogaine, and we had an incredible conversation. I told him, I'm like, bro, like, go to your mom, tell her what's going on, and maybe she'll help fund your ibogaine. It's like 6K, I think, is the cheapest one that still offers all of the modalities that are really gonna help you get clean. Go talk to her. And this is tough, man, because this still hurts a lot in my heart. Is he went to talk to her, and she threw him under the bus. She aired his dirty laundry out on Facebook, and she talked a bunch of shit about him. And then I told my wife, I said, man, like, addicts don't need tough love. Like, he's dead, man. Like, he's dead. She signed his death warrant with that reaction, and you can't blame her. She's a mom, and she's trying her best. And I ended up actually a couple of weeks later deleting my Facebook. I was like, man, the pandemic has been fucking nutty. I'm done. Like, I don't want to interact with these people that I grew up with anymore. It's exhausting. So I delete my Facebook, and after a couple of years, pandemic's over, all that, I get back on Facebook, and I see a memorial post, and it had turned out that the week after I deleted my Facebook that he overdosed and died. And what's really tough is now his mother, she speaks at events, and she goes and talks about how evil fentanyl is. And I think that it's not true, man. I don't think fentanyl's evil. I don't even think drug dealers are evil, bro. They're just people. Most of the time, with opioids specifically, addicts are just users themselves, right? No one's out there just selling drugs anymore. This idea of this, like, guy on the corner in a fucking trench coat selling you drugs to make a buck, that just isn't realistic. For the most part, they are addicts. If you listen to the disposition around the whole Mac Miller manslaughter case, so the guy who gave Mac Miller his fake Percocets that killed him, if you watched or heard anything about that, read the transcripts from the court proceedings, you would know that guy himself was an addict, right? It wasn't this like intentional, maleficent, like, I'm going to get you. No, he was an addict, and he was funding his own addiction. So I think that a lot of people, we put a lot of weight on drugs. I don't know if that's necessary. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that when it comes down to it, individual accountability supersedes, this concept of trying to hold others accountable, and this idea that drugs are somehow inherently evil, but some other ones aren't. Alcohol gets the pass, pharmaceuticals get the pass, but plant medicines and medicines that have been around for thousands of years. Look, opium's been around for thousands of years. Somehow we condemn that to just this insane degree. And I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily the right way. That being said, who knows? I don't know what the right way is, and I'm not necessarily saying that I do. I'm just more saying, like, this condemnation concept, I don't see it being like long-term something that will be sustainable. One sec, let me readjust here, boys and girls. Who would have known, man? It's a little uncomfortable sitting in an engine bay, Let's see. Maybe I got something I can sit on. I got. Oh, there we go. Check this out. That's right. I got a bicycle seat. I'm gonna put that right there. This fucking dipstick, this oil dipstick, is actually the culprit here, making me feel pain. But maybe. There we go. That's a little bit better. I've never done a solo podcast, man. I have been told by people that I should just use it to fill space as, it becomes necessary. One of the hard things I've learned after starting this podcast is that it's not very easy to get guests, and it's just, it's the same thing I've learned with music. I've tried to do about a dozen features, and it never works. And only one time has it been on my own accord. I have one feature with NDP, ENDYP, out of Colorado Springs. The dude's awesome, man. What a legend. I want to get a podcast with him in soon. But I did flake on him. We had a track that we did together, and then I lost the stem, so I was never able to actually take care of that. I have a Pro Tools folder on my iCloud. It might be in there. But yeah, didn't do that one. But every other one, I've usually been the person to initiate, send the beat stems over, and then I just never get anything back. And it's hard for people to come together. It's hard for people to create together, and it's mostly just a scheduling conflict. Scheduling is probably the most difficult part of podcasting as well. It's hard to get people on the same page. And then honestly, I've done 2 or 3 podcasts now where people are like, "Hey man, I don't want to publish the podcast. I talked about shit that I shouldn't have talked about." Um, and when you're the kind of person who can help people be vulnerable and open up, that's a hard thing, because when people are with me, they talk about things, and then when they're on their own and their ego starts playing into the equation, they're like, "Oh shit, I can't tell people about that." Like, I can't talk about, like, I had one dude who I talked to, and we were talking about, like, he's a medicine man, a shaman, and we were talking about, like, shamans and how they can't, like, you don't get to decide to be a shaman. And essentially what he said to me is, he's like, "Yeah, I mean, that whole kind of conversation around that, one is we smoked weed before." He was like, "I was way too fucking high, and I have a lot of friends who are going to be offended by the way that I describe that." So we cut that one. And then, yeah, there have been some other ones. But yeah, it's all a learning process, man. I feel like so many people, my wife, actually, she really wants to do some, like, content creation around being a mother. And I encourage it, dude. I think that's amazing. If you want to do content creation around being a mother, I'm all for it. But she watch this. We're gonna try to tie the shoe while she is running into the difficulty of, like, oh, I want it to be perfect. I want it to be good, and I want, like, different aspects to be embraced. And I was trying to explain to her just today, actually, that it doesn't even matter, dude. What matters is that you get rolling and you start to evolve as you go. You start to learn as you go. Like, that's the way forward. By the way, shout out Harbor Freight. Look at these, bro. Check this out. Got these lights. They were $1.50. I was like, oh, easy. You can get, like, what, 5 of them? Super easy. So anyway, side tangent there. Yeah, if you want to do something, man, the best way to do it is to just go after it. Pick up some momentum, and as you're rolling, learn how to do it. Limitations will start to present themselves, and as those limitations present themselves, then you can start overcoming these obstacles. But in the meantime, there's no rush to either A, create obstacles, or B, create perfection. Just start rolling, and as you go, you'll figure it out, man. That's what I truly believe. And I also believe that the only 2 variables that actually matter is time and attention, right? The more time you spend doing something and the more attention you give it, you will inevitably evolve. Whether you evolve into a celebrity, whether you evolve into a perfect person, that is to be determined by your own merits. And there's a list of them, I'm sure, as well as luck being one of them. But that will evolve by your own doing. It's out of the hands of me to say. But yeah, man, it's good. Where do we start, man? I haven't done a podcast in a minute. Last podcast I did hasn't even been published yet. So actually, this one will probably be published first. But I recently did a trip to Mexico where I went and ate psychedelic mushrooms with the grandson of Maria Sabina in Oaxaca, Mexico, in this little town called Huautla de Jimenez. That was a pretty special experience, actually. One of the ways I was able to take advantage of and get the opportunity to do that was I have a friend or a connection on Instagram called Jarrett Dreschel. I think it's Jarrett Dreschel. Jarrett's name on social media is Soul of Jarrett. He's got a good little following on Instagram. He does YouTube, stuff like that. We had talked. He used to sell these consultation calls where he would tell people how to create a career out of creating content around whatever it is they do. So I did one of those calls with him a while back, and it was a nice call, man. He's a wise dude. I'll be honest, every time I do those calls with people, I'm left going like, oh, like, it's stuff I already knew. Like, I did, Kato, the producer, I did his sound advice with Kato, and I paid all this money. I showed him my music, and honestly, dude, it was like, I don't think it helped me at all. The only thing it helped me with was networking. So maybe I'm just really fucking smart, guys. Not really. No, I so I have a conversation with Jarrett, and at the end he says, "By the way, man, I'm thinking about taking a group of people to Mexico to eat the mushrooms with Maria Sabina's grandson Bernardino. Is that something you'd be like interested in doing?" And I was like, honestly, dude, I was like, okay, yeah, I'd be interested. How much is it? And my brain's like, I have a buddy who used to sell like luxury plant medicine retreats, and it was like obscene, dude, like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And so for 10 days, it was $1,500. That's what he said. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's fucking super affordable. Yeah, count me in, dude. I'd be down. Just keep me posted. And then he ended up canceling the one that was planned for July. And then he planned another one. And he hit me up. He asked me if I wanted to go. And honestly, bro, I didn't have the money for it. And when he hit me up, I said to myself, no, I'm broke. But then, like, a saner head prevailed and was like, don't say that. And I said to him, look, I'm open to whatever the universe has to provide. I'll keep you posted. And literally the next day, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling him about this opportunity, and they were like, okay, I mean, you're going for sure. And I was like, well, I mean, I got to find the money. I got to get airfare, all this. And they're like, no, you're definitely going. Like, I will literally pay for you to go right now. And they paid for my trip. So they paid the $1,500 for this 10-day experience, and then I paid for my airfare, renewing my passport, all of that stuff. So that was super incredible, dude. Like, what a wild experience. Because, my initial reaction was, oh, I can't afford this. And then I said, wait a minute, that's going to fucking cock block. I'm creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by saying that. So I told myself, no, I'm open to whatever the universe has to provide. And in saying that, the door was opened. And, next thing you know, I've got this experience paid for. And with work as well, thousands of dollars worth of work landed in my lap right before I left for this experience. So actually around, 10, 11, 12, like $13,000 worth of work landed in my lap the week before. So the week before I left, I made $13K. And I didn't have to stress about money. It was an affordable trip. I think all in all, I spent $1,500 on my plane ticket, my passport, all of that stuff. And then the experience itself was paid for. So super incredible, man. And then the mushrooms as well. I've had some wild experiences connecting with the mushrooms and that spirit. And, I guess I'll tell you guys about my mushroom trip itself. What happened was, so you're eating mushrooms on the side of this mountain in a tin shack in Mexico with Bernardino, who is allegedly the grandson of Maria Sabina. Maria Sabina was she was a mushroom priestess who kind of put mushrooms on the map a little bit. She sat with folks like John Lennon. She sat with folks like Timothy Leary. And really, she is kind of the beginning of the psychedelic movement in the United States. If you're not familiar, a lot of people associate the psychedelic movement in the United States with LSD, right? And specifically, guys like Timothy Leary and Ram Dass. Well, what's fascinating is the very first entheogen, right, or psychedelic just means... psyche is mind, delic is origin, so it means originating in the mind. So psychedelic just means something that comes from the mind. Entheogen, entheo is like God, entheogen. I think entheogen is God-inducing or spiritual experience-inducing. I think that would essentially be the rough transliteration or however that works. So anyway, Timothy Leary goes, he eats mushrooms in Mexico. He says, holy shit, like, I feel God. And so he comes back, and the first experiment they do with psychedelics is they take mushrooms and they give them to people who are in the divinity school, right? So like people who are learning to become priests and things like that. And they give them mushrooms in a church, and they record the experiences. And what they find is that it solidifies and kind of emulsifies this conviction that these men have for God, right? To this day, all of the men that are still living still are in the faith. And not only are they in the faith, it is their life, and it's because they had such powerful and moving experiences. And this is kind of the beginning of this rabbit hole that Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, or Richard Alpern at the time, start to go down. And inevitably it leads to LSD. LSD was also being funded by, the CIA. That research was heavily involved in MK Ultra. That's why you have the likes of Theodore Kaczynski and what's his name? Manson. Not Marilyn Manson, the other Manson. The one from the Sharon Tate murder. Charles Manson. Dude, you know what's crazy? I was reading an autobiography recently about Danny Trejo, and Danny talks about how when he was in prison in the 60s at like Soledad or maybe San Quentin, how there was this guy who could hypnotize you and make you feel like you were on drugs. And he said the first time they were like, oh, make us feel like we're high on weed. And he hypnotized them and they were like, oh, okay, like I feel high on weed. This is amazing. And then Danny was a heroin addict, so he said, make me feel like I'm on dope. And the guy did it and he felt like it was on dope. And then Danny Trejo says in his book, that was Charlie Manson. That's fucking, what a crazy cross story there. That's the shit that makes you believe that life is a storybook, right? Is that kind of crossover is insane, dude. Absolutely nuts. But yeah, so the psychedelic movement is often associated with LSD, and while that is the climax of the psychedelic movement, a lot of it started with these psychedelic mushrooms in Mexico. So I went and I took these mushrooms with the alleged grandson of Maria Sabina. The reason I say that is because I read conflicting information. One friend of mine told me that Bernardino, who I sat with, is Maria Sabina's grandson-in-law. Someone else told me that he's not even related to her, and then he says that he calls her mama and says that she's his mother or his grandmother. So a lot of conflicting information. The family, there's so many of them that the family's essentially shattered into dozens of different little sects and groups. When you go to Huautla, everyone's trying to sell you mushrooms. You're a gringo, people are coming up to you like, hongos? And it's very interesting. And then a lot of people like Bernardino, but I've also been told that he does things a little bit differently. And because he does things differently, that he's kind of been shunned by the family a little bit. So honestly, I'm not sure what to make of it. I don't speak good enough Spanish that I was able to really get to the bottom of it. But I'm with Jarrett Dreschel, who is, he's a young kid. He's 25. I was also with Wonton Don from Barstool Sports. We shared a ceremony, actually filmed the entire ceremony. So I might post some of that video on my YouTube channel here. But Wonton Don, he's awesome, great guy. He ended up sharing a space with me. He ate 8 grams. I believe I ate 10 grams. It felt like 10 grams for sure, but there are different aspects of it. One is they were relatively fresh. They were not dry mushrooms. They bring it to you in a tea. You drink the tea. You eat the mushrooms in the tea. Again, I believe I ate about 10 grams. There's quite a bit there. And then we lay back and I throw a blindfold on and the medicine man begins speaking to you in this Mazatec language. They're not Mexicans. They're not Spanish Mexicans. They are Mazatec, right? Mazatec is the Native American, Native Mexican group from that area. So I take the mushrooms and after maybe 20 minutes, I start to feel like I'm levitating. And I say, oh, it's coming. And I had a little bit of reservation, a little bit of nerves because 10 grams is a lot of mushrooms, man. And I'm having maybe a little bit of reservation and nerves. And I say, you know what? I trust. It's all going to be okay. We're going to be just fine. I feel fine. I've been here before. This is okay. Not only that, the mushrooms, I've had many experiences over the past year, especially where the mushrooms have been calling to me, saying there's more for me in this life. I just have to show up and trust. And coming all this way was a great act of trust. There were many things that came up that could have derailed the entire operation, and I just stayed faithful and trusted and trusted and trusted. So I show up and I I eat these mushrooms, and after 20 minutes, I'm levitating. And all of a sudden, after communicating with myself and the mushrooms that I trust, I start getting transported through these corridors, right? It's like being on a roller coaster ride through all of these crazy geometric patterns and colors. And I'm going, and I'm kind of experiencing these like weird little infomercials that make no sense. And all of a sudden, I recognize that, oh, that's my racing mind. It's my monkey mind. So I start doing a technique that I learned in Vipassana meditation, and I start kind of stopping the outgoing thoughts and the incoming thoughts, and I just stay present with that breath, and it keeps bringing me back to this crazy like roller coaster ride. I'm going through it, and finally I arrive in this place, and this place feels like a giant, it's almost like a cathedral, right? And I get there, and there are these three entities there, these energy beings, and one of them says, "Wow, you actually came." And another one goes, "Of course he came." And then a third goes, "Welcome. We've been waiting for you." And I said, "Wow, this is so beautiful." And they said, "Yeah, this is your home. Like, this is where you came from before you were dispatched to Earth. Like, welcome. It's so nice to see you here. We can't believe, well, one of them couldn't believe I came, but we're gracious that you came, and we can't wait to share more." And I was like, "Wow, this is so beautiful. This is incredible. What is this place?" And they said, essentially, what you would call it, where you come from, is the Akashic Records. This is where all of the knowledge of space and time exists, and this is one of the highest planes that you can travel to. Now, at the same time, the medicine man is doing his thing, chanting, praying over me. Jarrett's kind of following behind, a couple of steps behind him, trying to like copy him, and I look over at them, and I like open my eyes for a brief second. I see them doing their thing. It's dark, there's a couple of candles. I see them doing their thing, and I come back and I say to the entities, "Is all of this necessary?" And they say to me, the reason they're doing that is they're praying over you, because a lot of people are very low density or low vibration beings or souls. And so when they come through these spaces, entities will attach to them and follow them back into their lives. And with you, you don't have to worry about that, because you come from a place that is so highly vibrated that nothing can come in here that doesn't resonate with that frequency. And they said, "Look," and they pointed to the floor, and the floor was glass. And underneath there were these snakes, and they were all trying to come up through the floor, but they couldn't get through. And I said, okay. I said, "So is all of this necessary?" And they said, "For you, not really." I said, "Oh, okay, so it's kind of performative, right?" And they like laughed and went, "Yeah, it's a little bit performative." And at that point I said, "Okay, so why did you call me here? What do you need?" And they said, "We have a job for you." And I said, "Oh, perfect. Like, I'm so excited." They said, "You're a warrior. Like, obviously, look how far you've come. Like, you're doing incredible work, and you came here, right? You heard the call, and you came, you trusted. And we would like to give you a job. But there's one thing you have to do before we can give you this job." And I said, "Okay, name it. What is it?" And they said, "You have to stop caring what other people think before we can take you on this next step of the journey." And I said, "What do you mean I have to stop caring what people think?" And then they showed me a slideshow of all of these people and places and times in my life where I was desperately seeking other people's approval. And it dawned on me that even in this space, I was still seeking people's approval. I was still thinking of like, "Oh, how am I going to explain this to people? What am I going to do?" And so I said, "Okay, so what do I do?" And he said, "We're going to make some upgrades to your system, and then it will give you the opportunity to work on these things." And they started speaking in this like tonal language, like, oh, like but tones that I can't replicate. And, like essentially doing Reiki on me. And then they said, "Okay, we've made the upgrade to your system. Now you will be able to withstand these changes, but also it's going to attract the opportunity for you to practice this." I said, "Oh, interesting." And then essentially they sent me back down the water slide, and I traveled, traversed through this maze of experience on this kind of roller coaster. And then one of the things that just kept echoing in my experience was like, "Stop giving a fuck. Stop giving a fuck. Stop giving a fuck. That's the next step. Stop giving a fuck. Like, you didn't come here to care what other humans think." One of the other aspects of that interaction with them, actually, that is kind of interesting, is I tried to bring up my problems to them. I said, my marriage problems, my money problems, And I tried to bring those things up to them, and they said, those are human problems. Like, those aren't real problems. They're like, do you know how to fix those problems? I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, so those aren't problems, are they? It's like, damn, you're right. Here I am in, God's living room or, his foyer, and I'm asking him to help me with this problem on earth that is not actually real. And that was really profound. I came back to earth and, landed gracefully. I woke up the next morning, packed my stuff up, and the other guys were still asleep. I packed my stuff up and went on a walk and just walked and thought. And I got back to the kind of camp, the hotel where everyone was staying, and I told a couple of friends about my experience and what I felt. And then we get back to the hotel around noon, and Jarrett comes in and says, hey, I want to do a group meeting. We get into the group meeting, and he says, I have some things I want to address. He says, I don't think you guys are taking this seriously. He said that I was disrespectful because the way that I thanked the shaman, I didn't look him in his eyes and say mucho gracias. I just said gracias, which was, I was on 10 grams of mushrooms. Like, with all due respect, I'm not looking in anyone's eyes on 10 grams of mushrooms. It's just not, I'm way too neurodivergent for that shit. But I understand, it's like fair if that's their custom. But he starts like laying in on everyone. And I said, the mushrooms, man, they're just like the whole time, dude, I felt like I was going to explode. The mushrooms like, speak. What do we say? Who gives a fuck if he likes you? And I was like, damn, you're right. And I said to him, I'm like, honestly, bro, I told you about my experience with the mushrooms last night. Like, I have to speak. I think you're not taking accountability right now. I think that what I'd like to see from you is more accountability and less placing the blame on others. If I were the leader in this position, which you are naturally a leader in this position because you have created this experience for everyone by bringing them all here. Before you start accusing people or trying to hold others accountable, what you have to do first is hold yourself accountable. So before you tell people that they're not taking this seriously, you need to acknowledge the ways that you've contributed to this not being a serious experience for a lot of people. He said people weren't in silence enough. People were partying too much. Those things were being brought up and addressed. And so I tried to gracefully tell him, like, you are the facilitator here. You're the one holding the vessel, and you've done a very poor job of holding the vessel. And I say this because I love you, right? I want you to understand that, you're learning, you're growing, you're a young kid, man. This is admirable. He's only 25. So that was kind of my first opportunity. Like, I fucking told him, dude. I told him exactly how I felt, and I felt empowered, and it was uncomfortable, and it was awkward, and I felt great afterwards. And I'll be honest, at that point, I was ready to get the fuck out of there. I was like, man, I'm ready to go. Ended up spending the next 3 days just kind of sitting around. I didn't go anywhere, do anything. Sat with myself a lot, which was necessary at points. And then on the way home, he overbooked the car. Like they bought a bunch of shit. Everyone did. He invited a secondary guest, this woman we met, to travel with us. So there wasn't enough room in the car. So me and my buddy Alex Ward actually ended up taking a bus back to town. So it was like 7 hours in a bus. Super exhausting. Got back to Oaxaca City, and I just crashed the fuck out. They all went clubbing, and I was like, nah, dude, I'm done. Zonked out, slept, had a crazy work day travel day the next day. And yeah, man, that was the beginning of it. And I'll tell you, since I've come home, I've had so many opportunities to practice that again. And I realized in the past, my biggest flaw has been that I've been a liar. And the way that I've been a liar is by lying to people to keep them happy, to make them like me. And I guess this experience made me realize that I'm doing a disservice to myself, to them, and also I don't care if they like me. Why do I care if they like me? And it comes down to how I value myself and how I perceive other people's value of me. The truth is I know who I am and where I stand. And so I don't need to seek others' validation in order to be at peace. And that was the message the mushrooms gave me. It's like, dude, who gives a fuck? Who cares what these other people think? You're here on a mission. Do your mission. And bro, I have like 4 open tabs right now of people who, like, one dude hit me up and asking me for money and to support him. And, all that. And I haven't had the conversation with him yet. I told him we had a call the other night and we got disconnected. He texted me and was like, hey, let's just talk tomorrow. I haven't talked to him yet, but when I do talk to him, I need to tell him, look, you don't call me to connect. You don't ask me how I am. You only connect when you want money, when you want to sell me something. That's not a vibration that resonates with me, so it's not going to work. I got another one who wants to do coaching. He wants to coach me and my wife as well. And he was like, cool, let's let my wife talk to your wife and we'll take it from there. And I was open to going this couples retreat. Honestly, I was trying to resolve some stuff in my marriage. And my wife had the call with his wife and was like, dude, this feels like an MLM. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it totally does. I respect that. And I'm not going to do something that, A, she doesn't connect with, and B, that doesn't benefit us together. So also, I'm not going to get too much into the detail of that, but that's an opportunity. I have to connect with that guy this week and say, hey, this isn't in alignment. No hard feelings. I appreciate you. Maybe in the future it will be, but at this time, it doesn't feel like it's something that will serve us. So that's, it's one thing to just not get into these situations in the first place just by being honest right away. But at least in this case, I have the opportunity to practice what it is that I got this upgrade for. So there's that. I've got a little bit of conflict with my mother, who is very much, we've just got a lifetime of conflict. And I don't address it. I just kind of gray rock her. I believe she's a narcissist, and I don't think it's healthy for us to speak to each other. And so I just push it off, My wife and kids just got home, so that's kind of exciting. This will be fun. Let's see how loud the kids are. You hear any crying? Should I just pause you guys real quick? Hi, baby. I'm podcasting. Do you want to come say hello real quick? This is my wife, Mary. Mary, I'm doing a podcast. I've been telling him everything about Mexico. Oh, thank you so much. Everything about Mexico, about our opportunity to join another MLM, everything. Do you want to just say hi?
Hi.
All right. I love you. Thank you. No worries. You're totally fine. This is my first time connecting this microphone, so I was just excited to check it out. Zelly, you want to come say hi to the podcast? Well, be careful. All right. Come over. Just watch that leg. We don't want to trip over it, all right? Come on over here. Here we go. So I'm going to pick you up. Ready? You can stand or sit. Here you go. You can just sit right there. And this is the microphone, so you can talk into it.
Hello. I have 5 children.
You have 5 children? Oh, my gosh. That's a lot. Me too. That's crazy. We got a lot in common. I love you. Did you say it?
I'm his children.
She is my children. Hello, Ari. Hi, baby. You got paintbrushes? Wow. Can I have a hug? Oh, you're going to paint pumpkins. Here you go, girlie. Look. Daddy's doing a podcast. This is a family podcast now. Can you say hello?
No.
No, that's okay. You don't need to say hello. And Salvador. Hey, babe. Hey, babe. Watch that tripod leg. I don't want to knock the tripod over. What's wrong? Salvador, can you watch out so she can get past you? Here, come here. I want to see this. Do you want to see this? Do you want to see it? Watch. See, there's a camera right there. And we can talk into it. You want to say hello?
Yeah. Hello. My name's Ellie. And I'm here to eat you.
And we're here to eat you.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ask Mommy if she got Daddy a caffeine?
I can't.
You
Because
can't?
we didn't got coffee.
No,
Just
you didn't
pumpkins.
get a coffee.
Yeah.
No worries.
We had
What did you think
Yeah,
here?
listen.
Let me ask you a question. What did you think about Daddy's trip to Mexico?
good.
It was good.
Yeah,
What did you
it
think?
was-
What did you think about the Jaguar that Daddy bought you?
He's here to keep me, and he's in the van.
He's in the van and he's here to keep you safe.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's not put our face directly on the microphone. We just hold it kind of away from it like that. Don't put your mouth on the mic.
Only I we got some engines for my dad.
Oh, did you?
Love it.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna let you go. Daddy's gonna keep going with his podcast real quick, okay? Alrighty. Well, I was short-lived. I gotta go now. Thought I had a little bit more time to do a whole podcast. I don't know how long that was. I guess we'll find out. That was episode something of Naked with Fatherhood. My guest, Fatherhood the rapper. He's the man. Go ahead, follow us on Instagram at It's Fatherhood the Rapper, TikTok at Fatherhood the Rapper, here on YouTube, Fatherhood the Rapper. And check out all the fun and exciting conversations that have yet to come. Peace. I'll probably get back to that story too, by the way, at some point.